About 4 or 5 years ago, back when I had that old yellow truck, I was driving to work one day and they were cleaning out the basement of a house next to a church. And coming out of the basement was one of these drums, and they were bringing him to the curb. And I pulled over and I went to grab it, and the kid that was doing it said, "Oh, here, I'll help." And he went down to the basement, grabbed the rest of the parts, and helped me put them all in my truck. I brought them here, I put them in the loft, and they have sat there untouched for about 4 years. Until today. I'm going to add some voiceover work to this video, but there's nothing to say right now. I'm just taking apart this old drum kit. In order to save material, I decided to make molds that would be basically the inside diameter of the drum that I would bend my plywood around. I think it would have been easier if I'd made a bigger hole, basically, that I then put the plywood into and forced into the hole to kind of do it from the other side, but I was trying to save material. If I were to do this again, I might make the other type mold. And yes, of course, I am making this drum kit out of closet doors. That was the whole mission and point of this. And also thanks to Paul Jackman for putting together that little title sequence for me, in case you didn't notice it was him. For many, many years, I have been touting that the hollow core door is the new palette, and I've been making instruments for 6-7 years now out of doors. And I have mostly made guitars, but I have made some sort of like Latin percussion instruments like wooden bongos and cajon type things. But I really wanted to round out the band and make a full drum kit so I can have a whole hollow core door band. I have electric guitars, acoustic guitars, and even a double bass that I made using hollow core doors, and so now this is the big step. I got lucky finding these doors right about a half mile down the road from my house, and they were these really nice panels. They were not the typical Luan closet doors that you find with the cardboard interiors. These are either like a birch or a maple or something. I'm not really sure, but it was a better wood, a better quality plywood, less likely to chip and whatnot. So this should be a really good drum set. I was very excited about it. But the downside to this wood is that it is much harder to work than the more common inferior Luan doors. The first thing I had to do was clean them all up and take them apart, and even taking them apart is a lot harder than the Luan doors because the interior is made of, in this case it was like a press board, and that's a little bit harder to get off than the cardboard filling that are in those Luan doors, but I managed to get it down without too much waste, and I cut them to the size of my laser cutter, about roughly there, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. But you can see here all those trim pieces I'm going to use to help me make my molds. Both sides of the doors had to be cleaned. The one side because I had all that glue and junk on it, and the other side because I had the finish on it, which I needed to remove in order to get glue to properly adhere to the wood. It was a lot of work. All right, here's my proof of concept. Let's take a minute and talk a little bit because I have some problems I need to address. So the whole sort of concept of this revolves around me kerf cutting these hollow core doors on my laser, which gives me something that looks like this. It's just like a million little lines. Focus. And then that gives me the flexibility to bend this without it snapping. First thing I notice is that this door being, these are maple or birch, I'm not sure, which is great for drums, but a little bit stronger than the typical hollow core doors I get that are Luan. I need to probably cut these lines a little bit deeper to get a little bit more flex, because you can see I'm having a little bit of difficulty just right here on the ends specifically. The other thing I think I need to do is put a little bit of an overlap here. So I thought I could maybe butt joint these, but I might need to overlap them to make it look a little bit cleaner. So those are the two main issues with that side. The problem is that I can't make one piece in my laser. It's just not big enough. I could potentially do something where I stick half of it in and half of it out, but it gets complicated and confusing. And so I just thought this might be an easier way to do it if it works. Now, the other thing I need to be able to do is put a chamfer on this edge, which I should be able to do without a problem once I get this all nice and smooth. But the biggest, dumbest mistake I made was when I made all of these discs for mounting. First off, I didn't mark a center hole. Dumb of me, because in the computer is way easier than finding one. But each one of these layers is 1/8 of an inch thick. So 2 layers is 1/4 of an inch thick. So in essence, what I did is I took 1/4 inch off the diameter, but really what I need to do is take 1/2 inch off the diameter, because there's 1/4 inch on both sides. So this is too big by about 1/8 of an inch to fit inside a drum. So I have to go and cut new molds all the way around in the proper size. And of course I already glued these all up and screwed them. But what I can do is I can cut some of the smaller drums out of the larger drums. You know, I should have enough material to just sort of eyeball line it up. If I'd marked the center to be easy, I didn't. And then I might have to cut a couple new ones, but a little bit of waste, but I'll be able to use some of this again. But check this out too. Usually on the Luan doors, like the direction doesn't make a difference, but on these doors, like this is an unscored piece. It's very difficult to bend this way, but it bends this way very easy, because apparently the 2 layers of grain are facing the proper way for bending it like this. But I can only get 23-inch pieces this way, so in order to do a drum, I'd have multiple pieces instead of just 2 pieces if I go this way. That's the idea of the laser kerfing. Now that I found all the new problems that I created and didn't know how to fix, I'm going to fix those and move ahead. And I was able to just cut one of each size of the new size drum molds that I needed, and then use those as templates to fix my other ones, put them back together. So I didn't waste too much material. I just ended up with a couple extra things. And then I tried doing that sort of half lap that I discussed about having these pieces overlap. And it wasn't too big of a deal to do it, but it ended up not really mattering. As I got better at figuring out a system for clamping these pieces together, I discovered I just really didn't need it. By the time I did my last drum, I just had the first 2 pieces I put down, I soaked glue on the second ones like I'm doing here, and then I put the second ones on, and I just did it all loosely, and then I filled in those gaps later because I was not able to get a perfectly good round thing, and you'll see when we get to it, I just covered the gaps. But that's the basic idea. You don't have to glue those first 2 layers together first. I was able to just do it all together at once, pop it off the mold, and then clean the edges up. It was a lot of work, but I got pretty good at it by the end. And I did each drum like a little bit differently, you know, but like I said, like I could do it again a lot faster, but man, it took a long time to get there. Now that I know, and that's how you learn, right? Here you can see I'm adding a reinforcement ring, which is a way that some drums are made. I learned a little bit about drum making in the process, of course, but I'm still far from an expert. But so adding that reinforcement ring just makes it a little bit stronger around the edges. And here you can see this drum I'm, trying again. This is before I kind of figured out I didn't need the half laps and stuff, but it was all just a big experimentation process. I thought I would glue it together, get one solid piece before trying to bend it, all sorts of different things. You can see here I purchased a couple extra of these ratchet straps, and now I'm starting to get a system down. This is about where I figured out, like, oh, if I just put these together first and then glue this layer around it, I can do it all in one swoop. I have 2 layers of the plywood just sort of overlapping. So there's a seam here, and then there's a seam here, a seam there. And it's all just dry. I didn't kerf it because these are bigger, so the curve is more gradual. I had to do it, you know, with these short pieces. So each layer has 3. See, I've got a little bit of a gap there, but some of that's going to tighten up because what I have is these just clamps on. So the theory is that I'll soak it now, and then I can take this top layer off, soak it, put a ton of glue on it, put it back on, get a rough clamp like that, and then cinch strap it, you know, all the way around, and I should be able to close it up and get all the air out. This is definitely a hassle doing it with these thick pieces. It'd be so much easier if they were thinner, but you know, that's kind of the point of the project. And also if I can make them one sheet, that would make life a lot easier. But so then once I've got it all glued together, I'm going to put the reinforcement bars on the inside, and then, you know, I'm going to do something clever to cover up all these seams. Each closet door skin is 3 individual layers of laminate that equal about 1/8 of an inch. So each one is like, you know, less than 1/16 of an inch, more like a 32nd or whatever. And that's how, you know, doing this type of bending is usually done, is 1 layer at a time. But since these doors are already made as 3 layers, I'm forced to sort of like take this shortcut, which makes it a long cut, by forcing 3 layers around at once. And that's what makes it so difficult. If we were doing this all with these sort of paper thin layers, just one at a time with glue in between each one as we went, it would be a lot easier. So by this point, when I did the floor tom, I was feeling pretty good. I felt like I had a good system down. As you can see, I'm doing the, you know, all of it at once, get the straps on. The one thing I did notice though is that where those strap buckles are, there's a couple times I maybe ratcheted the strap too tight, and there's a little bit of a dent in the shell. So in the future, if I were to do this, I would make sure not to have to ratchet them so tight, you know, like check them all out, or put some kind of guide, like I said, maybe like an outer, you know, shell to protect that from happening. And then I had to go around and glue these reinforcement strips. They're about 1.5 inches thick, and I did them on all sides, you know, both sides of each drum. It took a while because you have to do one, let it sit for a while, then flip it over. And then once I had all those glued in, it was time to go in and actually clean those edges up and get a proper edge on each of these shells. I just did this on the table saw, and then I sanded it down by hand. I found that worked pretty well. I did see some gaps here and there where I didn't quite get the wood closed up as well as I would have liked to. I filled some in with epoxy, and then there are those seams that I had to sort of sand down and make flat, and I filled them in with strips of wood and whatnot. I'm going to paint that area, so it's going to hide it. So I used some epoxy and some little strips of wood to kind of fill that all in. Yep, that was pretty much it. I got it like doing body work on a car. I got it fairly smooth and ready to do my custom paint job. There's a lot of science and discussion that goes into the bearing edge of a drum, kind of like tone wood in guitars, and I don't know much about it. I just went with a very basic chamfer on both sides, and just to get it going and working without getting too in the weeds on that, and it seemed to work pretty well, as you'll hear. Now I don't want to paint the whole drum, I just want to paint the seams that I created, and I also had this idea of painting the inside, so now it's time to get to the sponsored part of the video. You remember last summer I went to Narwhal Labs where Jeff helped me mix some top secret Total Bone elixir paints up to make my soy sauce green color that I painted my truck with. And now Total Bone actually has this kit so you can make your own elixir colors. I like this paint a lot because it's super durable, it's low VOC, it works well, it paints and sticks to just about anything. It does take a couple more coats than some paints, but it is worth it. When you get there, you get there. I've had it on my truck for a year now, and it's, you know, holding up to the road and everything. But so this is a great way to kind of mix your own colors in some smaller batches, and it's a kit that is now available at Total Boat. In case you didn't know, Total Boat is sponsoring this video because they are awesome people and they are my friends, and I appreciate all of their help. So I am using, right now I'm going to mix up some soy sauce green to spray my drums, and I'm also going to use their Halcyon finish. Hang on. I'm also going to use their Halcyon Clear to do a clear coat over everything once I do my selective green paint. If you like Total Boat, you can go to totalboat.com and you can use my coupon code that's in the description below to save a few bucks on your Total Boat purchases. I would highly recommend using them for your finishes. Now, everybody thinks of Total Boat as being the epoxy people, which they are. I don't use epoxy too often. I just use it in small amounts for some inlays and stuff because I am more interested in their environmentally friendly stuff like these paints and finishes that are water-based and durable enough for boats, so they're probably durable enough for whatever you're making. Works for me. Back to the show. At first I thought I would try spraying the elixir paint. I thought that would be easier, and it turned out to be a little bit more difficult because of the shape of the drums to get in there. Even on the big drum I was having a hard time. So I dumped that out and just roller brushed it on the inside, which worked much better. I ended up doing basically 2 coats, but I did a 3rd coat of a touch-up to get the final evenness and color that I was looking for. Back to the bearing edge, I had only done the inside edge before I painted, and then I still had to go and do the outside edge. I'm not quite sure why I felt like I needed to paint first, but I did. I think I wanted that sort of clear look. And so here you see I'm using a 45-degree angled router bit and just taking a little bit off. I did some test cuts first, cleaned up a few rough spots here and there, and that is a snare bed that I'm carving into the bottom of the snare. Right where the metal snare goes across, it's supposed to be a little bit lower so it helps settle in. And I think I need to go back and do that a little bit deeper. I don't think I have quite as much snare sound as I should have. But now I decided to spray the Halcyon clear, so I add a little bit of water to make it nice and thin, put it in my sprayer, and here you can see this sprayed quite nicely. I could have sprayed the green that easily if it wasn't inside a circle, and I didn't bother finishing the inside because it's painted. I'm not good at spraying finishes or brushing on finishes. I just don't have a lot of experience or practice with it. It's just something I'm not into. And that's one of the things I like about the Halcyon is that it's pretty forgiving and I can get away with doing sloppy procedures like this and still get a pretty decent finish. All the heads I used on this kit were furnished by Remo Drums, and I want to thank them so much for participating in this build, and I'll tell you more about them in a second. First, I want to show you how I transferred the holes from the old drums to the new ones, because I wasn't quite sure where I needed to put all that hardware, so I just simply made a paper template off of the one drum and then moved it to the new one and followed that to get all my holes in the right place, and it worked pretty well. The drum set I took apart to get all the hardware and measurements and whatnot was not a good drum kit, and this hardware is not good, and some of it was broken, and then I ended up having to order a few pieces to sort of fill in the gaps to replace the broken ones, and I had to just order the same junky stuff to line up, but that's okay. This is my first drum kit. It's not expected to be a Stradivarius or a Ludwig even. But so Remo, I had contacted them years ago when I first wanted to do this drum kit, and they said that they would donate the heads to me, and then I just never, my sponsorship fell through. It never happened. So when I got the okay to do this with Total Boat, I contacted them again. I couldn't even find the email we had written back and forth because it was so long ago. But I still had the guy's name in my Rolodex, and so I was able to email him again and ask if he remembered me, and he did. And they graciously donated these beautiful, beautiful heads. We went back and forth. I said I wanted something clear, to show off the paint job on the inside, but I also wanted to make sure we could see their logo because, Remo makes great drum heads, and I really want to thank them for playing along on this build. Great company, great people. I really enjoyed working with them. I was so unbelievably excited when I hit that first drum and I heard it ring and produce a sound that sounded somewhat like drums and musical, and then I started getting really excited about putting this kit together. You can hear there's not a ton of like that, rattly snare sound in there, and I think that's because that snare bed, like I said earlier, wasn't quite deep enough. I'll probably have to go back in and work that a little more, see if I can get the snare seated into the drum a little more and get some more vibration. but we decided to go with a black front head instead of clear, and you'll see why in a minute. And this is why. Jeff has a vinyl cutter over at Narwhal Labs, the makerspace adjacent to Total Boat, and so he cut me some letters to put on the front head. And so between this and then the sound hole we put on the front head would look like you can kind of see through and see the green through that black. I thought it'd be really cool. And you'll notice that half of the lettering is missing because I screwed it up and I had to ask Jeff to cut it again for me. I know what you're thinking. Go ahead and say it. Tim, you took apart a perfectly usable drum set and made another drum set that's just basically the same quality. Yes, you're right, but that's how we learn, right? I mean, I think most guitar players would say that the first guitar they ever made was just a guitar that they took apart and rebuilt, right? And that's kind of what I did here. I learned a little bit, and I learned that I'm probably never going to do this again, but it was a ton of fun. I'm adding it to my bucket list of hollow core door instruments. It was totally worth it to me. Now, the other thing you're probably concerned about are all these drum hoops that I'm going to waste them. Fear not, I have a long history of making furniture out of broken drums. There's a couple pictures probably flash up on the screen right now, and I will definitely use these drum shells for future projects, if they don't become drums again even. This ain't gonna cut it. We need a real drummer. Okay, so I think I was telling you we're gonna do two takes, right? One where you say how awesome it is, and then one where you're honest.
Okay. So I'm going in right now. I'm like excited. All right, I've seen it on video. This looks awesome. Check it out.
Set up lefty right now.
Yeah. Okay. So they're pretty light.
Right, but yeah.
They got reinforcement rings. They look beautiful, man. You did a great job. All right, so I'm gonna hit these a little bit. Make sure it already sounds nice and punchy. I just lowered it a bit, you know.
Okay, there's nothing in.
Yeah, there's nothing in there, right?
Yeah.
And that's still super, like, kind of done, like punchy.
Front head might be a little tight.
Oh, but that's okay. All right, that's good, man. That's pretty good. I might tune that down a little bit, but sound nice and even. Resonating good, I like it. Sounds like a cool snare, a little different than I would normally do. Sounds cool, real chesty and fat. I mean, I do this on every drum set whenever.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? Whenever every day I set up, I start going around.
You might have.
Okay, so this is pretty low.
Okay.
And Tone, you did a really good job with the bearing edges, I think.
Thanks.
I mean, I've had expensive drums that didn't do as good a job as that.
Yeah.
And you know, where the pitches were a lot less clear. Let's get much.
All right, no, we'll do the honest take after. Okay.
No, it's all honest.
Sounds so much better already.
Yeah, a little bit more brighter. That sounds pretty good. Do my normal drummer stuff. I mean, a lot of people look for a sound a lot like that, and there it is. So that's very cool. So I didn't mess with this one. Let me see what I think it's wanting to do. It sounds good. All these drums are working good, man. I am surprised. Like I said, I've gotten brand new drums or whatever I've played where I can't get the, the hoop to come down in a way, like, I tighten a little bit and then another lug dies on me and it's so hard. And these I'm like, wow, these are pretty easy. So the edge maybe gets a little weird, but then, oh, there it is. That's nice. That's good. Okay, sorry, getting excited. Can I try to play something?
And then I just put this recorder.
sounds awesome. Right? Who's not going to be happy with the way that sounds? That sounds great. Floor tom sounds awesome. The rack tom sounds awesome. Snare drums, everything sounds good. But you said the experiment was to see if you could make the drums and if they would sound like drums.
Yeah.
And I think they
definitely sound like drums.
They sound like really good drums.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
And they're punchy. We've got them like at first. This drum sounded longer, and it had which is a common thing for these kind of drums. And even this one too. But then I kind of tuned them into places where I found a happy place where they like being short.
Yeah.
And like thick but punchy and short. Which a lot of drummers
still no
like.
gel on them either. That's just the drum. Yeah.
And you'll see, with these kind of heads, you'd think, a lot of times you don't need to, but you'll see drummers a lot of times do still have to put like all kinds of moon gels on pinstripes and stuff to try to get to there.
Yeah.
These drums got there really easy, so that's something. I can't, pretend like I know exactly why or everything. Right. But that, like, drummers would be really happy in general when they get to this kind of place. Are we going to do a performance on these instruments together? Somewhere?
Well, yeah. I mean, this is just a little bit of the afternoon Donnie and I spent together with these drums. Like I said, we go back a long way, and we spend quite a bit of time talking about how to tune drums and what makes them sound good, as well as a little bit about what makes guitars sound good, sound theory, et cetera, as well as some of our plans to potentially use these drums in the future. And we played a little bit together, as well as just more of Donnie playing a part. I recorded most of it, so I put that up on my Patreon page at patreon.com/TimSway for anybody that's over there that gets into this sort of nerdy stuff. I invite you to go check it out. And if you're not a patron, you can just go join for a month and then cancel, and you can hear it all too. Thank you so much, Donnie Fortin, for coming down and playing these drums for me. I really appreciate your time. And I also want to thank Total Boat for sponsoring this project for me. This is a dream come true of many years I've been working towards this. And now, thanks to Total Boat and all my other fantastic sponsors throughout the years, I have finally done it. I've built my whole band. I've got the drum kit, I've got some Latin percussion, I've got the double bass, I've got electric guitars, I got acoustic guitars. I think it's time to get the band back together. I really want to hear all this stuff under the microscope in like a professional recording studio situation, good mics, all isolated and stuff. I bet you do too, right? Stay tuned. Alright, so this is Donnie and Tim playing together. Woo! This is still just with the little pocket recorder, just a little outro. So thanks a lot for watching, and please be good. And I would love to hear your comments in the description below. And we will be doing some better recordings sometime soon. All right, thanks.